Hi and welcome to this video. Today they played the Norway Chess Blitz Tournament. What that is basically is a 9-round Blitz tournament where the top 5 players will get seated in the main tournament so that they get 5 whites against 4 blacks. So basically it's a sort of an exhibition tournament, but there is something on the line. And in this tournament Magnus Carlsen played against Fabiano Caruana, who he will meet later this year in the World Championship match. So of course a very interesting matchup. The reason I wanted to show you this game, well, of course it's a marquee matchup because of the reason we already mentioned, the World Championship match. But this game featured a very cool trick that I covered in a video, and I will link to that video. But let's see the game, and when we get to the moment, we will talk about it, and I will put up the link. But Magnus had white, and Caruana had the black pieces, and Magnus opened up with d4. Knight f6, c4, e6, knight to c3, and we have the Nimzo Indian with bishop to b4. Most likely this means that this is not Caruana's preparation for later this year, but who knows? He has been playing more like d5s and queen's gambit accepted, stuff like this. But okay, we have the Nimzo Indian here, e3, the Rubinstein variation, castles, bishop to d3, and fairly normal play ensues here. Now knight to e2 was played by Magnus, d5, c takes d5, knight takes d5, and a3. Now Caruana wants to keep the bishop, so he plays bishop to a5. And now the question becomes, can we take on c5? Not really. Then black can take on c3, the pawn structure will be crippled. So what gets on with it? Just castles. C takes d4, and now Carlsen takes with the pawn. So Carlsen has an isolated queen pawn, which can be a strength or a weakness. It always depends on circumstances. Knight to c6, bishop to c2, setting up the standard battery here with queen and bishop lining up against h7. Knight c2, e7, queen to d3. We have this mate threat which black prevents with knight to g6, and now Carlsen takes on d5. Here the question is to take with the queen or the pawn. My gut feeling would be to take with the queen, and I would want to play against this isolated pawn, but seems like Caruana wanted to go for equality and he took with the pawn. So he's hoping that, okay, but the pawn structure is symmetrical. We have 3 pawns here for each side, 2 pawns on the queen side, and each has this central pawn. However, it is slightly easier for white to attack this pawn. I mean, he can play bishop b3, knight c3, put immediate pressure on the pawn. And plus we already have this battery here. So I think white is battered mostly because of this knight, which doesn't seem all that effective. Okay, bishop f4 now. Okay, this is attacked twice, but of course the knight can't move because of the mate threat on h7. So rook e8, and now the exchange of black squared bishops. After rook e1, bishop d7, now knight c3. So we see that Carlsen has this light squared bishop and a lot of pawns on black squares. Also this weakness on a light square. And again, we can easily attack it with further pieces. So probably still better for white. And now instead of playing the middle game, true to form, Carlsen goes for the endgame, queen to g3. He wants to push in the endgame. Bishop c6, he has to protect the pawn, but this bishop is rather passive. And interestingly, Carlsen goes for the knight against the bishop, hoping to get a good knight against the bad bishop. This reminds me a little bit of a famous game between Fischer and Sadie, Antoine Sadie, an international master from the United States. It was with colors reversed, but it was a similar knight versus bishop situation. The pawn structure was a bit different on the king side, but nonetheless, maybe he had similar ideas in mind. F3, F6, rook trade, king comes to F2, king comes to F7, and Magnus keeps one pair of rooks. Now, we can still say white is slightly better, but it's very hard to make anything happen here. G4, rook D8. Still, this bishop is very passive, but I mean, how does white attack anything? That's a problem here. G6, knight comes to E3, rook H8. Just defending the H file for now. A4. Now, if Caruana wants to take here, then rook here, and we penetrate on A7. So, also the D5 pawn will be hanging. So, Caruana leaves it for now, plays king E6, protecting the pawn. And now A5, slightly increasing the space advantage on the queen side, but still nothing to attack really. And Caruana is actually playing this phase quite well. B6. See that now this pawn taunts well with the bishop, covering squares that the bishop can't cover. So together they cover a lot of squares, so there's no entry for the white rook. Rook A1, rook C4, and now black starts to get active. Rook to B4, rook B1. And yeah, we can say that black has equalized here, and white shouldn't really have any ways to win this game. And had Caruana played here rook to B3, and probably it's very difficult for white to make any progress here. However, Caruana actually blundered quite badly here, and he played F5, and this allowed Carlsen to execute quite a nice theme that I already covered in one of, well, I called it patterns in action. It was a very cool pattern called the trapped rook, and that should give it all away. Carlsen played B3, and it turns out this rook is trapped. Okay, it's trapped by its own pawn here. The pawn of B3 is covering these squares, the knight is covering B5, and this pawn is covered, so the rook, it can't go anywhere. So for the moment, the white rook, not for the moment, but eventually we can trap this guy, and the white rook will roam freely. Let's see what happened. F takes G4, and now knight A2, tracking the rook, and because of this being covered, and this being covered, and all of these, the rook has to go to B5. And now B4. And now the rook is completely trapped, again by its own pawn, and this wonderful little soldier here, which is now covered by two pieces. And this is what I meant with now the rook is free to roam, because the knight is covering the pawn. And white can give up a pawn here on the king side. After this, he takes with the king instructor as well, because these two can't make a pass pawn against this one. So rather than take with the pawn, he takes with the king. Bishop F5, rook B2, and now Carlsen, he could win the rook now by taking the next move, but he has a better idea, not to take it, because the rook is just trapped. You can take it whenever you want. So the next phase is quite cool. He will simply walk over with his king to protect his pawn. Let's see what happens. King D2, bishop F5, rook B3, and this opens the path for the king to come to A3. Why does it come to A3? Simply to, okay, first we take care of this pawn, G3, completely controlling these two. Bishop F5, and again, yeah, all the pawns are black squares, they can't be attacked. King A3, now we're covering the pawn, this rook is completely trapped. Bishop D3, and actually here after rook to F2, black resigned. The rook will now roam freely. And we'll see, maybe we'll pick up some pawns, maybe we'll take eventually on B5. This position is just completely lost here for black, and Caruana resigned. So a very nice game by Carlsen, and he plays in the top 5 in the tournament, so he gets an extra white in the main tournament, Norway Chess, multi-box Norway Chess. But yeah, do check out the video. I will link to it, the trapped rook video, so you can learn more about this pattern. And That's what I try to do here on the channel, you know, show you current events and also make it so that you can learn something from the games. And okay, Norway Chess coming up. I'll try to cover it. I'll see you in the next video on my channel. Bye bye.